Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 18th episode of Slow Living, a webinar series driven by sustainability rooted in community. I'm honored to welcome Bill Morris from Blue Star Recyclers as our guest speaker for today's episode, as well as our first guest of the new year. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Kevin.
Of course.
Good to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you. Bill Morris co-founded Blue Star Recyclers in 2009. After discovering people with autism and other disabilities possess innate skills for tasks involved in the recycling of electronics. Blue Star is a nationally recognized social enterprise with a mission of recycling electronics to create jobs for people with disabilities. Fulfillment of their mission to date has produced significant social, environmental, and economic impacts, including the creation of 50 permanent jobs for people with disabilities, the certified recycling of 24 million pounds of electronics, and over $18 million in social return on investment. Along with their 5 operations in Colorado and Illinois, in 2020, Blue Star helped launch the Advanced Plus program to replicate their employment model for people with disabilities through 20 other eSteward certified electronic recyclers in the US. On this week's episode, Bill will be giving us further insight on Blue Star Recyclers' operations and their tremendous impact on the community. So before I give the floor to Bill, I would like to remind all of our audience that we'll have a Q&A section at the end of his presentation. So if you have any questions during, please send them in the chat box and I will make sure to call on you when we get to the Q&A portion. So without further ado, Bill, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kevin. Let's see here. Let me pull up the slide deck here. And
looks great.
All right. I'm just going to expand that a little bit or try. There we go. Okay. So this is Ian Sabar and Jack Ryan on our Denver team, and I'll introduce some of our gang as we go through the slides. So I'm sitting here today with you ostensibly because of 3 people who are pictured here. The first one is a young man named Chris Garcia that I met in 2008, March of 2008, so almost 13 years ago. And Chris, along with a handful of other people, were receiving services at a disability services day program. If you're familiar with the day programs, they're at best a place where people just can kind of get socialized that have disabilities, and at worst sometimes they're just adult babysitting. And the good thing about this place is they had Christopher and a couple of other people in there taking apart some electronics, and they weren't being paid or really trained formally, or really there wasn't much thought to what would happen beyond that, but they were being kept busy. And one day I had an opportunity to just sit and watch the 4 of them take apart computers and printers and things like that. And I was sort of blown away because they were so good at it. Christopher could take apart a desktop computer with a screwdriver in about, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes. I think it still takes me about 12 to do with the power tools. And he just tore through them. And I asked him where he learned how to do it so quickly and so well. And he just sort of shrugged his shoulders and said that he taught himself. I went and looked at their files and read that all 4 of the guys that I had been watching were diagnosed on the autism spectrum. I didn't know much about autism, so I went to take a look. And of course, every person that has some sort of diagnosis, it's an individual with a diagnosis, and they're all different. But there are a couple common threads with autism, one of which I think I was looking at, which is there's an affinity and an attraction for systematic, procedural, tactile, repetitive work. You could see it just by watching them that they were really thriving doing that task. So one thing led to another, and I went home and wrote a business plan to start some sort of paid employment opportunity for these guys, because none of them had ever had a job, a paying job. I don't think they had even interviewed. They were all in their mid-20s. And I just felt that they had marketable talent, should have a chance to see if it was worth employment. Um, and I was lucky to find a recycler in Denver who offered to pay us 5 cents per pound to take computers apart. And we started life in a little warehouse in the southern part of Colorado Springs. And these 4 young men became employees for the first time in their life. And their job was to take apart computers. And we did that for a year, and they thrived in every way I can think of. I've never quite seen anything like it. Emotionally, physically, mentally, they just changed. Having a purpose, coming to work, having something to do, and doing something you're good at does something for us. I think in terms of self-esteem, it's, I can pat someone on the back as much as I like, but the experience of doing something that you're good at and that you enjoy changes you on the insides. And these guys, definitely, you could see it. We expanded that team to 6 people by the end of the first year. And then we were really ready to take the next step. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to happen. But the way it was sort of provided for us through a serendipitous meeting with the man on the lower right-hand picture, Tony Fanant. That's he and his wife, Mary, at our first Christmas party in 2010, I think. Tony and Mary own a company called Qualtech Manufacturing on North Nevada. A friend of mine said there was a truck sitting in front of their business that had the words Blue Star Electronics on it. And I was just interested to explore what the heck that was doing there. So I called Tony, and we met the next day. And I found out that that truck belonged to a tenant who had been in one of his buildings. They left town in the middle of the night, owing him quite a bit of back rent. And they left his warehouse full of old electronics. And so as he's telling me this, I'm sort of thinking, holy cow, this is exactly what we need. We didn't have a truck at that point. The next day, he asked if I could come back, and I shared with him what we had been doing for the last year. And he was very, very interested. He had no background in that, but he asked if I would come back the next day and share the story with his wife, Mary. And we went to coffee. And by the end of that coffee, they had offered the truck, the warehouse, in a very, very large cash investment to get us off the ground. I didn't have anything left to offer in terms of an investment. So this came totally out of the blue, and it was just one of those things. I asked them later on, what possessed you guys to do this? Because I told them I didn't have any experience with running a recycling company or employing people with disabilities. And their answer was, we believe that a person who wants to go to work should have a place to go to work, regardless of whether they have a disability or not. And so they helped us get off the ground by giving us the resources to get rolling. When you start a new organization, a new company, I've been told it helps to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And we were very fortunate. We had 2 problems that we wanted to tackle, and oddly enough, they have nothing to do with one another, yet there's some very strong synergies. One is that less than 20% of adults with disabilities in the United States are participating in the labor market, yet most can work and want to work. At the same time, less than 20% of electronic waste is ethically recycled every year, yet almost every ounce of electronic waste is recyclable. So we had unwanted junk, and we had people sitting at home that wanted to work and couldn't work. And so we really just put those 2 things together. And so creating one solution, and our mission statement reads that we recycle electronics to create jobs for people with disabilities. Now that's Dominic Dunbar, who is employee number 6. He joined us at the end of that first year. And because of a pretty severe sight impairment, he had to retire a few years ago. We tried everything to keep him on board, but he couldn't see anything. So, but we're still working on that, actually. But he's a phenomenal employee. So we started life as a for-profit. because I didn't have any background in the nonprofit world, and it never occurred to me that the mission would be worthy of that. But after about a year and a half of having to learn the recycling business the hard way, we just couldn't close the gap between earned income and expenses, and we were facing having to shut down it by the end of 2010. And that's when a couple foundations came to visit us and asked us to, or encouraged us to become a nonprofit. Um, and what that did is allow us to have more time to learn the business, to be able to close the gap between earned income and expenses, which we've done, I'm proud to say. Um, but as a nonprofit, I feel like we owe the community something because we don't pay taxes. And this is the impact that we've been able to provide the communities that we serve. The first is environmental impact. To date, we've recycled, we're just coming up on 25 million pounds. But when you recycle electronics, the biggest environmental impact is that the greenhouse gas emission reductions occur at for every pound recycled, you get 1.4 pounds of greenhouse gas reductions. And that's primarily caused by that when you reuse these base materials, you don't have to mine new ones. And most of those greenhouse gas emissions have to do with the mining of virgin materials. The other part of the environmental impact, which is very, very important, is that some of this stuff has heavy metals and other toxic materials. And when it gets recycled, that material doesn't get into the landfill or open space. So we have a pretty significant environmental impact. That 24 million pounds has created permanent employment for 50 people with disabilities at Blue Star Recyclers. Now, this is the really the big deal that changes, I think, changes everything about what we do. When you employ people with disabilities, you produce significant social return on investment. A fairly new term, and we've produced, I think, $20.2 million of social return on investment to date. And if you're not familiar with SROI, it's just simply digging deeper as far as what your impacts are. On the surface, our mission statement says that we employ people with disabilities in the recycling of electronics, but under the surface, what almost no one sees is that a person with a disability, when they come to work, their earned income displaces benefit income. When they're at work, they're not being served in day programs and other therapies and things like that, which are taxpayer funded, or those programs are reduced. The reduction in healthcare savings is unbelievable. When you have a job and you get up in the morning, you're feeling good about yourself, and you go to work, you take less medications, you go to less therapy, you go seek healthcare a lot less in terms of emergency medicine and other kinds of healthcare. And finally, the change in family income. Quite often, families that have a person with a disability living at home, one of the parents is staying home. When that son or daughter goes to work, then that parent who had been staying home can go back to work. Now, these are all areas that had to be thoroughly researched, and we didn't do that. The Colorado Institute for Social Impact in Colorado Springs did a 1-year-long study, and in 2018, they documented $2.5 million in SROI, 2019, $2.9 million. We haven't done the study for 2020 as yet, but we have the formula. So what we know is we're slightly over $20 million to date. And this is the distilled number that I think is really important. That means that for every pound of electronics that come into Blue Star to get recycled, each pound generates 83 cents in social return on investment and other economic impacts. So recycling, if you have to charge for your recycling like we do, recycling doesn't cost, it pays when you employ this workforce. The community actually makes money when they recycle using a recycler that employs people with disabilities. So this is a very important thing. It's an added motivation to recycle. The way that we generate our earned income, Oh, before I get to that, this is maybe the most important slide. So as I mentioned earlier, when I started this thing, I just knew that there was an affinity for the work. I had no idea what the quality of the workforce would be. But in almost 13 years with this gang, we've gone, uh, since we opened the Enclave in 2008, we've gone zero absenteeism. They do not miss work ever. If they do, it's because they are they usually very ill, and they get up in the morning and they want to get to work. We've had less than 10% annual turnover, 0 to 1 lost time accidents. Our average employee tenure across all of our facilities is 5.2 years. Now, if you're a recycler and you look at those numbers, at least in our industry, those are backwards. Our competitors deal with almost 500 to 1,000% turnover, massive absenteeism problems, and lost time accident problems. Because the traditional workforce, when they do this kinds of work, it's not work that they're attracted to. And guess what? When you do work you don't really like doing, you find reasons to not be there. You find reasons to goof off. You find reasons to get hurt. And that's just the nature of the beast. When you employ people who want to be there, who are good at what they do and enjoy what they do, they come to work and get all their work done and don't get hurt. So it's pretty cool to work with a gang that is totally dialed into being there. We had a third party researcher come sit with us for 3 months in 2014 or 15, and they track the minutes of the day that the workforce is engaged in the tasks that they're being paid to do. And as a team, they were 98.43% task engaged. What I can share with you is the average American employee doing that same work is 49% task engaged. So this workforce is actually twice as productive, reliable, and safe as their counterparts. And that's counterintuitive because most of us grew up with an idea that a person with a disability would be less capable. Our 13 years of experience across the board says that's absolutely backwards. So that's been the greatest discovery. And the quote from Temple Grandin here, I think, gives you just an inkling of why the work, why they're so good is that the job means everything. It's not a way to make money to buy beer to go out partying. It's the reason they get up in the morning. So it's not the reason that they make a car payment or something. It's the work, the actual work itself. So that was a pretty fun discovery to make. A lot of people will ask us where we get our employees, where they come from, and they're referred to us from everywhere, from just about every agency. You can think of families, grandparents, Division of Oak Rehab, you name it. But what we decided to do in 2014 was to focus, while we'll employ anyone of any age that can do the work, that wants to work. We wanted to focus on young people that are coming out of high school. What happens to a person with a disability that's in special education is they will graduate with the other students at the age of 18, but the district holds on to their diploma for another 3 years in hopes that that student will acquire the soft skills and hard skills and maybe an internship that will result in employment. The problem is they almost never do. The employment numbers are dreadful for transition to work. And what happens is these people they age out at 21 and they go home, they go right back to the bedroom they were raised in, where they're playing video games, and we lose them. We just lose them. And they've got talent and they've got interest to work, but employers miss them. So what we do is we started this program with Cherry Creek Schools in Aurora, Colorado, where they built a miniature Blue Star recyclers on campus. They take all of the school district e-waste and run it through this program. We taught the teachers how to teach the students the skills required to come work at Blue Star, and they get a chance to acquire and demonstrate those skills on campus in a comfortable setting where there's teachers there that can work with them. And then those, as soon as that student is ready, they just pick up the phone and call and say, we have another one ready. And so we hire directly out of that program. There's a photo of Kean Fair, one of our Denver employees, at the age of, I think he was 17 or 18 there on the left. And he's been with us 5 years now, and he kicks butt. He is, and sort of the other 9 people that have come from the program, they come in there to our place as a candidate. Think about this as an employer. I get a candidate who walks in that's done every task already that I need him to learn how to do. They have a goal setting that they acquired on campus, where they got to a certain level of productivity, which is our baseline. And they come in and they act like they own the place. It's pretty cool. And I get an employee who is ready to go. The school district gets to graduate that student into the maximum positive outcome for transitions, which is to go from school to work. The school district gets to actually saves a little bit of money because they get that student graduated out. And then the taxpayer saves a little money because typically a person that can't find work by the time these guys age out of the program, they'll have to go to Division of Voc Rehab. And that costs the taxpayer anywhere between $3,000 to $6,000 for a person to go through their program. Instead, they just call us, we hire them, and there's no taxpayer funding involved in this. So they get to learn the hard skills of recycling. And this is, by the way, this is transferable to any type of recycling, whether you're doing organics or household recyclables or anything. The work, the tasks themselves that are repetitive are very similar. Electronics has a little bit of different stuff, but these guys would thrive in any recycling environment. And our social enterprise, which is our electronics recycling enterprise, these are the services we offer, and this is what pays the bills. I'm very proud to say that as of 2017 through 2019, we were self-sustainable through earned income. That way we were able to use our grants and donations to fund expansion and buy equipment. 2020 knocked us off that a little bit. I think we were back to 90% self-sustainable, but the model is designed to pay for itself, so we don't have dependence on outside funding, and that's very important to us. We receive zero government funding in terms of employment for employing people with disabilities. We've gotten an REO grant or two for equipment and things, but we do not receive funding for the employment of people with disabilities. We're eSteward certified, which is the most stringent standard, third-party audited standard in the industry. It has a complete prohibition on the export of any materials before they are processed, which is very important, because our industry has been caught quite often shipping things abroad that are being sent abroad to be dumped, not remarketed, not refurbished, but dumped. And if they do get shipped over to be processed, usually they're being processed by employers who are not paying a living wage and who do not have facilities that are environmentally safe for employees. So an eSteward certification is I believe is the best certification that the consumer can support. We're very proud to have earned for the second time Colorado's top environmental award, which is the 24 Karat Gold Award by the Environmental Leadership Program at CDPHE. And you earn that award from going above and beyond what's required. What really makes that something we're proud of is we're the only recycler to earn the award. And the year before, the Denver International Airport Ball Aerospace year before that. So we're in some pretty high cotton when it comes to the kinds of organizations that go after that award. These are the 5 operations that we have, starting with Colorado Springs when we opened in 2009, and then we steadily grew in Colorado. We took some time off to open facilities in Illinois, in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. The reason we did that, and it's a whole other conversation that I won't go into, but Mitsubishi Electric America took an interest in us, and they asked us to open a facility in a city where they have operations, and they had 7 cities around the country, and we chose Chicago. This summer, in the middle of pandemic, which was not the greatest timing in the world, but we were able to open our 5th facility up in Basalt to be able to create jobs for people with disabilities up in the mountain counties, because their recycling habits up there are terrific, and we have great customers up there. Pitkin County Solid Waste was our primary partner, and so is Rotary. We run a program in the Chicago suburbs called Easy Electronics Recycling. And this was another thing that was born in the middle of the pandemic. The residents of the suburbs there in Chicago it's good recycling diversion areas. They really are good about recycling, but they couldn't get out of their homes to recycle, and the programs that are available out there for them to drop off were closed for about 3 months. So we got a grant from Dakota Foundation, sponsorship from 8 Rotary clubs, bought this van, and we go to the homes of people in the Chicago suburbs and pick up electronics. Rotary, for their part, they cover the cost of the pickup service, which is normally $50. So all we have to charge for when we get there, if there is an item that has a fee, it just is recycling fees. So this has really increased volume of recycling from the public. It's the most convenient way to do it. Rotary is our marketing arm. They promote it in the neighborhoods where they have clubs, and it's helped us be able to employ 3 employees with disabilities at our Chicago facility. Kevin mentioned that we have expanded indirectly, and this has been, as of 2019, this has really been a push for us, which is that I sort of sat back and realized that if we were going to only grow at the rate that we could grow directly, because it takes a lot to open a new facility, and when we do that, we might have 5 or 10 jobs. We proposed to our certification body, e-stewards, to basically train other electronics recyclers on our employment model. In other words, have an intentional workforce inclusion and development program, and using our model. And we received a large grant from the Smith Charitable Trust, and again, Mitsubishi Electric. And we're going to train over a 2-year period, 20 of the best electronics recyclers in the US who have an interest to replicate Blue Star's model and employ people with disabilities. So far, out of the 20, we've done, I think, 13 in the United States. And even though with the pandemic, it was sort of cumbersome this year to get the training completed, they go through a 5-month training program by James Emmett and Company as using Blue Star's model, and it's phenomenal. And the recyclers are starting to experience what we have, which is they're getting really good employees. We have launched a program last year in South America in Santiago called Kiklos. They've been there for a long time, and they took Blue Star's model, and they now have 27 employees with autism working at their facility in Santiago, where they recycle computers and cell phones. And then we're in the middle of working with AAA, All About Autism, in the UK right now. We were supposed to be up and running in the fall of 2020, but the pandemic pushed that forward about a year. So that's the Blue Star story. It's I had to kind of tear through it, but this is Zach Anderson from our Colorado Springs operation. And I'll finish by just maybe sharing a little bit about this young man, because this is really the best part of my job, that I get to see the growth in human beings and people who have a hard time when they come to Blue Star. They don't really even know their talents and their assets. Most people that have engaged them most of their life have been focused on their deficits or their diagnosis. So when they come to Blue Star, I don't have any interest in their diagnosis. I'm not a service provider, nor do I get paid for by the government to serve them. So what I'm interested in is what's right with them. What are their assets? And Zach came to us, and he was very technical. He's a young man with autism, and very detail oriented. And he set the record at computer disassembly. I think our record had been 30 something computers disassembled in a 4-hour shift, and he broke that record in his first year, I think at 44 computers. And then we were able to promote him to be a team leader. So he's now the supervisor of his production team of 5 people in the Springs. If you go into our Springs office, you'll also see that he'll greet you. He's running the front counter as well, and working with the public. When I hired him, if you would have told me that he would be capable of working with the public, no one would have given him a chance. He couldn't interact socially. Today, it's as natural as breathing in and out for him. He just had to do it and practice it, and now he's very good. And this has been our experience really with everyone that comes to Blue Star, that when they come in, their assets are hidden. Our job is to uncover them, discover them, and develop them. And all we really do is provide the opportunity, and they take advantage of it. So it's been a ball, and with any luck, we'll just keep adding the amount of jobs around the world using this model. So thank you.
No, thank you, Bill. That was phenomenal and very uplifting. So thanks for a little bit more insight into what you guys do. Going off of that, I mean, it's in your mission statement, right? The disabilities. And
Yep.
I mean, obviously you're giving these individuals an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't. So I applaud you and thank you enough for being here and obviously solving an environmental crisis as well.
Sure.
Kind of segueing into it for the Q&A section, I have a question, and unfortunately with the time frame, it's the only question that we'll get to. But you see in your organization seem to do everything right. And it seems that, you know, your progress, everything like that is certain. And so my question is, what is the biggest obstacle and what is something that you strive to better yourselves at within the industry?
That's really funny because I quite often say that I think I've done everything wrong because I didn't know anything when we started this. So everything's been trial by fire. So if it looks like we've done everything right, that's great. But such is not the case. I think that what we've done is to take action on behalf of of the desired outcome and not try to overthink it. I think what a lot of entrepreneurs do is try to learn everything first before they take action, and you just can't do that. If you know what it is you want to accomplish, just get going, just get rolling. We learned this as we went. Now, we were very lucky to have an angel investor, so maybe that was the reason we were able to do it. But I think the other thing is the people and the resources we've needed have always shown up, because I think we were doing what we could. And to answer your question, the thing that's always remained my biggest bugaboo is the percentage of the population that understands recycling of electronics. It's not very good. It should be so much better. In the United States, if I were to line up 10 people and ask them what they did with their electronics that they got rid of, you would see about 7 or 8 would say, well, I just threw it in the trash, or it's still in my basement or my garage. They don't understand how to recycle or why. And that is what we have to change. We're not going to get anywhere with diversion rates increasing if we don't get the public educated.
No, I absolutely agree. And I mean, that's exactly what this forum is for as well. It starts here and radiates outward. So, Bill, can't thank you enough for being here this afternoon, and for everybody tuning in. Bill Morris of Blue Star Recyclers, changing the world. So, everybody tuning in, thank you so much. Bill, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening, and respect each other and respect your mother. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much.